Okay, well, it's 3:02. We'll get going. Let me introduce myself, David Carey, Director of the Planning Department. Inside joke is saying our address, 555 South 10th Street. We have to do that now at our public meeting, so that's getting used to that. Want to thank you all for your time today. Appreciate it, the ongoing efforts that we have. We have a very good, interesting meeting today. We're going to talk about the equity topic, some specific things in that. We have Robbie Summers here with us from Inclusive Communities. We want to thank Robbie for taking the time to be with us here as well. And then we're going to get into some transportation topics. That's a huge part of the comprehensive plan, as we know. And we have our consultant, Jesse Poor, here with us today. So thank you, Jesse, for joining us as well. And with that, I believe I'm handing it off. Who am I handing it off to, Kelly?
You're handing it off to Robbie.
Okay, straight to
Robbie.
Robbie.
You want to introduce her real quick?
Yeah. So Robbie Summers from Inclusive Communities. We've had many great conversations with Robbie through this process. She has been helping us directly with our equity subcommittee work, as well as helping us talk about more general topics within the comprehensive plan. So it's been a great help. We have a lot of very good information being developed, and we want to introduce those topics to you and have you give us some input today in this meeting. So with that, I'll hand it off to you, Robbie. Oh, you're muted.
I'm going to share my screen if you don't mind. Okay. And so with that, okay. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. Okay. So our agenda, as David was saying, we're going to start by having our equity discussion. Then we're going to do a group activity. We're going to discuss the comp plan policies. Then there will be the transportation discussion of comp plan policies, and then wrap up and next steps. So we're going to get started with an activity, a group activity that I thought would be kind of fun, kind of different, you know, as we've been working throughout the day in various areas, some remote, some in the office. Our minds are kind of stuck there sometimes. And so just want to prepare you for sharing with the group. So what I'd like for you to do is I would like for you to, this is called What's in Your Space. So I would like for you to choose an item that is near you, by you, on your desk, wherever you're sitting, in the kitchen, on the sofa. And then I would like for you to grab that item. I would like for you to hold it up to the camera and then explain why that item is on your desk. Why is it important to you if it has significance? So it can be as impersonal as you want or as personal as you want. And so I will start, and then we're going to do tag. Okay. So I don't know if you can see this. This is my item that is on my desk, and it's been here for about 3 days. I've been kind of ignoring it. This is, I have to register for a workshop. It's a 3-week workshop that I have to do on the DISC assessment. And so I will be a DISC assessor after that time and point. So I put this, I got it about 3 months ago, put it up on the shelf, and then I was reminded that I need to register. So this is what is on one of the items on my desk. And so let's play tag. And David, you're it.
I kind of knew I was going next. So what I have, and hopefully you can see it, this is There we go. So this is my iPad, and the reason why it's here is because since the beginning of the year, I have been going mostly paperless, and so it has a very good pen with it, and I do digital note taking now. So that is why it's here, and I effectively use it literally every single day now. So with that, I'm going to pick on the staff, and I'm going to go to Andrew.
I have it's actually a stress ball. It's shaped like a piece of corn, but at some point in the past year, I've ripped it in half. So I think that's a good testament of the kind of hectic year, many of us have had. Kelly, next.
This picture my daughter drew. Couple reasons. She's a budding artist. She's has an art mentor at LPS, but also you probably can't really tell. That is me, and I'm sleeping both day and night. I was diagnosed with a sleep disorder where I excessively sleep, which sounds amazing, but it's not because I never feel rested. So I just keep that around because I think it's somewhat amusing from her. I'm going to go ahead and tag one of our planning commissioners, Tom.
So I'm taking this call today from my kitchen, and I have a candle here in my kitchen from Wax Buffalo, one of my favorite local candle makers, and it's warm ginger is the flavor, and I have it because it relaxes me and calms me down. So how about Danae? We'll call on Danae.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to hand up my little bitty calendar that has the time on it and the date. And because I'm sitting at my desk and I'm a slave to this little calendar and this little timing, because as a lawyer, we get to bill every 6 minutes in increments. So it is something that I can't do without. And then let's go to, I can't see anybody else on my screen. How about a volunteer? There we go. Let me get down here. How about Alan?
Right here is my space heater. I usually work in my basement at home. It's really cold out here sometimes, so it's very important to have this really close to me. And I will tag Jesse with FHU.
I have a peanut butter jar because I'm trying to eat less candy from the candy jar at my office. So there we go. I've got a peanut butter jar. Hey, Tracy, I see you outdoors. How about you?
Well, I am sitting outdoors. I have my iPad or my AirPod case somewhere. There we go. Because my husband and I are sharing space. And so that allows us to try and be as least intrusive as possible as we try to maneuver this situation. Let's see. Marilyn, you're next on my list.
Okay, well, I have a little Buddha around for the same reasons other people have calming effects. And so this is a very helpful thing to have by your desk. Oh, I'm supposed to pick somebody. Stephanie.
All right, I have my highlighter because my life is about not forgetting things and remembering to go back and review things. So that's what my highlighter's for. Kieran?
Yeah, hey everyone. I have a little bottle of lotion. Obviously today is pretty nice, but it was a long cold winter, so didn't like having crumbly hands during the day. It's supposed to be therapeutic. I don't know if that actually worked, but it was a nice idea. I'm gonna pass it to Brian.
Hey everyone. This is an inside joke for Tom Beckius, but your phone's ringing, Tom. He's gonna remember that. That's like a year-old joke. So this like sculpture of a fence and a horse-drawn plow is from my dad's office. He's a retired police officer, but I grew up in Western Kansas, and this always reminds me of seeing all the old farms out kind of near Garden City, Dodge City, and all the jobs that I've had since I started when I was like 22. It's been like a desk job, I suppose. Mowing yards doesn't count. Ever since I've had a desk job, that's always been on my desk, so it's always a great thing to look at.
Brian, would you like to choose someone?
Come on, Brian, get with it.
Tom, your phone's ringing. I'm trying to think who hasn't gone yet. Dean, have you gone yet? Finnegan?
No.
Okay.
And I can't do a picture because she just walked out of the room. My constant companion, except when Jerry offers her something, is my dog. And she has been with me throughout the pandemic. And before that, my spine surgery. She has been with me constantly for 2 years and rarely leaves my side. She's my stress reliever, my best friend. I can say anything to her and she doesn't judge. So love this dog. She's a rescue golden retriever.
Oh, yeah. Good dog.
Beautiful.
Tracy Core. Tracy there? If not,
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay.
I'm actually driving. I'm just leaving campus, but I'm sitting at a stoplight. And Dean, you took mine because I have a rescue dog, and he was actually my husband's dog. We just got him this last summer, but he I can't leave him home alone. So he's actually in the car. He goes to work with me every day.
Oh.
Unless, of course, it's really hot and then I have to make arrangements, or very cold. I had to make arrangements then too. But so Vaughn's here with me. I can't show you a picture, but he's here. Oh, let me see. I have to find someone to tag now.
Tracy, so
I'm
that
scrolling.
No, because you're driving. So I tell you what, can someone
Thank
volunteer? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Can someone volunteer who has not gone?
Sure, I'll go. This is Megan. I promise I'm not in the witness protection program.
If you say so.
Yeah. You maybe can't see this, but this is a bottle of Gatorade. Since I'm outside, I have limited things with me, but this is important to me because 90 minutes ago, I just got my second COVID shot. So trying to hydrate. So.
Oh, keep hydrating.
Yes. Susan.
Hello. Keeping with the dog theme, this is, can you see her? Wait.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
This is Josie Marie Larson Rodenberg, and she is my constant companion and my office mate. And very important, just what Dean said, you just have a constant companion, Tracy too. It's just nice to have a furry friend share the office with. Keep my spirits up. Even though she's really bored right now. Let's see, I don't know who's left. Maybe somebody, another volunteer.
Is there anyone else left?
How about Dick Campbell?
Tell me the question. I got in late.
The question is, anything around you in the room that you're in that is significant to you, and why?
In this room, as you can see, I'm using my wife's computer, And we seem to be constant companions of scheduling when who gets what, as far as Zoom meetings on the calendar. But behind me and out of sight for you is a drawing board that we built into the house that I've used for many, many years in drawing landscapes. And that's been pretty much a constant companion.
Thank you for
I think
is that
Christy
everyone?
is the only one left.
Okay, Christy?
Hello, I am also driving, but I did replace the Easter flag on my way out of the drive and replaced it with the spring flag welcoming everyone to the house. So again, the dog theme with the English Springer Spaniel.
Beautiful. I want to thank everyone for sharing. And now, I mean, you know a little bit more about each other than you did. You learned something new today that you may not have known before. And for those of you that had the dog theme, wow, thank you. Today is the anniversary. We had a Shar-Pei lab. Black Shar-Pei lab that was with us for about 13 years. And he passed of cancer this day, 2 years ago. And so it's still no easier today than it was then. I tell you, pets become your world. They just consume you, take over. I used to say I have two sons. One is a two-legged, hairy son, and the other one is a four-legged, furry son. And so it was great to see the pictures of your pets. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you. Okay. And so as we look at the comp plan and policies, I'm often told that you must look back in order to move forward. And so one of the strengths as we looked at the L Plan 2040 is the continuity of specific promises made and promises kept to maintain and enhance the health, safety, and welfare of our community during times of change while promoting ideals and values. We all can see that our nation and communities are facing new challenges, and that not only impacts how we respond today, but how we prepare for our future generations. Now more than ever, our interconnectedness and action-oriented lenses of equity are vital for us individually and as one community. As we transition to Plan Forward 2050, we intentionally want to pause for just a second to reflect and celebrate some of the unique mosaics of one community, Lincoln and Lancaster County. Our mosaic: one public school district, one community. Our mosaic: collectively working together on the future of our youth throughout the city. This is a major aspect of our one community policy and perspective. Our mosaic: the largest Yazidi community in North America, which is an ethno-religious community referring specifically to the Kurdish people of Northern Iraq. Our mosaic: consistently being recognized for having the most welcoming fan base in college football. Our mosaic: renamed after our 16th US president. Our mosaic: welcoming visitors for something as silly as Josh Fight that happened this past weekend. Plan Forward 2050 sustains the rich mosaic noted in L Plan 2040, characterizing our growing community needs. Plan Forward 2050 is a candid, heartfelt partnership of practicality and vision. As we all know far too well, planning for sustainable change requires patience, commitment, effective collaboration, and timing. In addition to recognizing and accepting when matters are not within our capacity. So let's dig in and look at our groundwork. Early in the process, to assure that everyone was viewing this process through the same lens, a collective definition of equity was defined and specific areas of interest were drafted. Equity, as defined by the group, reads, provide meaningful access to all opportunities and establishes a culture of belonging, regardless of a person's identity, i.e. economic status, race, ethnic background, culture, religion, sexual orientation, age, or mental, physical, or linguistic ability. Determined areas of interest that were discussed over these last several months: workforce development, community facilities, neighborhoods and affordable housing, energy, utilities, and climate change, technology, business and economy, public transportation, which is huge, early childhood care and education, and health. So let's talk about the process. Excuse me. The subcommittee was led through a series of meetings that focused on specific policies and broad topics that have intentionally and unintentionally have provided a disadvantage to a person or group of people. As was noted, inclusive community, whom I represent today, and co-facilitators, Maya Harris and Francesca Beltran, assisted in facilitating large group brainstorming sessions and small breakout room discussions. We did 4 two-hour discussions, and they were held between November 2020 and most recently February of 2021. And there were reoccurring themes during this discussion. And so as we look at the themes, the collective definition of equity, as you see along the side of the screen, steered our discussions. And so we discussed that words matter, eliminate language barriers, support early childhood care and education, support high quality jobs, provide access to affordable and reliable technology, invest in marginalized populations, improve access for civic engagement, improve access for affordable public transportation, promote a sense of belonging in public spaces, ensure safe, affordable, and accessible housing, and continue equity conversations beyond this process. And so as we take a look at some takeaways from the facilitated discussions, we took a look at the policies, policies focused on community resources. We talked about that quite a bit, that may mitigate the need for interaction with law enforcement. That was a pretty interesting conversation, very passionate conversation that we had with that particular topic. Explore community investments and focus on equitably providing resources for marginalized populations. Affordable and safe housing should be a significant part of complete neighborhoods. That was another very vibrant conversation that we spent quite a bit of time on. Considerations for developing the city for the working class by providing easy access to childcare options, education, and transportation. Our next two slides, community resources and example draft policy, will be led by Kelly.
Thank you, Robbie. So we wanted to talk a little bit about where we're at with community resources and facilities. This was our last facilitated discussion that we had in February. And so we're still in the process of kind of breaking down those conversations we had, making sure we fully understood the context of what we heard from the group, and then evaluating and reevaluating draft text. So we don't have any specific item to call out today, but that will be before you at a future meeting. However, we just wanted to give you an update about some of those topics that were part of those vibrant discussions that we've had. In regards to law enforcement, we did talk a bit about the policy that was drafted, and a lot of that text came from the 2040 comp plan. And we were discussing the need for additional content if that was necessary, and looking at providing updates to the action steps within that policy that's reflective of the work that's already happening in our community. So things like the TRACE initiative with the Malone Center and other more relaxed times with interactions between the community and LPD, like Shop at the Cop and Pop at the Cop, where the community can interact with police officers and ask questions in a less formalized setting. But as Robbie mentioned, we talked a bit about those ways to mitigate the interactions between members of our community and law enforcement. And that really stemmed into looking at adding policies for community resource and accessibility. So we have two drafts that we're working with our equity subcommittee group on, one that focuses specifically on youth, and another one that is general to all community members. So there is quite a bit of overlap because what's good for youth is good for the family and vice versa. So we want to make sure that we're looking at that from all sides. But we didn't want to just forget about the youth aspect, but we also didn't want to forget about the individual aspect within access to community resources and things people need to be able to thrive within our community. So we'll be bringing that forward at a later date for review with this group. But we also talked with the community resources about our libraries, and there was a lot of good conversation about libraries and the integration of technology within those. There's a lot of programs around the country that have public or Wi-Fi hotspot checkout program and things like that to provide a little bit more access from my home base for individuals within the community. But then also talking about integration of services provided by the library, co-location of services and partnerships. So the group was really passionate about this idea of the library being the neighborhood hub where people go to access not only like physical resources, but maybe partnering with different organizations to host career fairs or job fairs, as well as inviting community agencies to hold space within the library for the day and educate the public about the resources that they provide. So those are some ideas that we're working with the group and our community or our staff about incorporating. And then this last one was about public health. We're looking at kind of two aspects to this. We're updating our goal right now. So in the L Plan 2040, we talk about health as healthy community, which is great. And a lot of the text supporting that is very applicable to what we're talking about, but we're looking at focusing more on the person aspect rather than just the community and how someone could live and interact with our community and make the healthy choice the easy choice within that. So that's an aspect that we're looking at. And then we also had a great discussion about providing more information and expanding upon our life expectancy discussion. Lincoln Vital Signs has put together great information and a lot of data about life expectancy and discrepancies between zip codes that can vary up to 20 years on a person's life. So making sure that we're fully looking at, especially from the equity standpoint, how those all interrelate and correlate. And then before we hop into our discussion, I wanted to bring this part up. Childcare and early childhood care and education is also part of this community resources element to the comp plan. And this example feeds into the question that Robbie is going to help lead our discussion on. But we're really having a conversation at this point. And I'll note that this is a draft policy and these are draft action steps just to kind of get a feel for the conversation. But the policy looks like evaluate methods to improve access to and quality of early childhood care and education experiences. And so the 2 bullet points underneath that are kind of a variation of action steps that we've been discussing about what makes sense within a comprehensive plan. So the first one, child care centers should be located within neighborhoods and near schools and parks if possible. That's a very traditional planning method when we're talking about location and development of different facility types. That second action step, explore implementation of a citywide free high quality full day pre-K for 3 and 4-year-olds. That moves away from what the city and county would be responsible for and really like starts diving into the community vision and what we see for 2050. And so as we've been having this equity conversation, we're trying to figure out the right balance between the traditional planning methods and community visioning and maintaining that full, well-rounded discussion about equity within the comp plan. And so I'm going to pass it to Robbie to lead our conversation related to that.
Hey, thanks, Kelly. We would really like to hear from you, your thoughts, as Kelly had mentioned, and suggestions, kind of merging the traditional with the visionary. And so the question is, to what extent should Plan Forward 2050 include policies and actions, steps beyond the traditional planning method that is currently there and explore more of the community visioning? What are your thoughts surrounding that question?
Well, so, President Biden just announced that, he wants to dramatically expand early childhood education. So if his infrastructure bill were to get through, then to me, that makes a lot of sense. Locally, we kind of have a little bit of a roadblock with federal funds. For those of you familiar with the world of early childhood education, and I only am from serving on Educare's board, there's only one game in town when it comes to Head Start. It's a monopoly, and it's owned by Community Action, and no one else shall pass, right? Lord of the Rings style. So if that's something we'd want to explore, are we talking LPS taking this over? Are we talking about bringing in federal dollars? Like, I think you'd want to be visionary, but at the same time, you'd want to not like throw red flags up for all these organizations that are in early childhood, because if Biden has his way, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but I think all of us may see this coming, there's going to be a lot of creative destruction. All those home-based healthcare organizations or childhood educations run by women will all close. All those go out of business because everyone's going to go to the free universal. Why would you pay? I pay, man, like $2,000 a month. It's insane. So
it is.
Why would I do that? So I guess I would there's a lot of moving parts in early childhood right now. I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I'm glad this isn't on Facebook. But those of you who know this, Robbie, I don't know if you know this, but this meeting was on Facebook for a while and it scared me like every time. Like, I can't be on Facebook. I can't be recorded. So thank you for letting me share.
You're welcome. It's interesting because it's sad to say, gosh, I was with Head Start about 20 years ago. And yes, we had early Head Start, which was Educare, was that section. And then the community organization, formerly known. Anyway, they lost the grant, but that piece, that early childhood piece, did not move. The preschool went to Omaha Public Schools, and all transparency, that hasn't worked out either, but as people had expected for it to. So it's unfortunate that the needle has not moved with the early childhood piece and the monopoly. I feel you. Lord of the Rings, I feel you. Thank you for your comment.
Yeah. And if there's any community action people out there, I mean, no disrespect, like that's just the nature of the beast. Yeah.
It is. I would concur strongly. I was in it, so I understand. Yeah. Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
Thank
Robbie,
you.
This is David. I was just going to interject a little bit here, just saying what you, Brian, just kind of the way that you encapsulated your comment is kind of exactly where we're at. We're trying to find out where that balance point is for the comprehensive plan. So something that I'd like the group to think about and hopefully comment on as well is, there also might be an option where we have more general statements in the plan that say that the community should aspire to do something, and in this case address that pre-K need that's out there, and maybe be a little less prescriptive in saying how that would happen, but that to have the plan be a little more aspirational while still carrying those traditional planning methods for physical planning and policies in that sense. So what Brian just said is kind of hitting on exactly kind of where we need to try to find out where we need to go with this.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
exactly.
One thing, and then I'll shut up. The people have opinions too. Danae Kalkowski has lots of opinions. She gets paid for them by every 6 minutes. But I was making fun of Danae. I forgot what I was going to say. Quality. Maybe the general statement could be that the comprehensive plan encourages quality early childhood care, which the Community Foundation and others have really led Lincoln early childhood centers to focus on moving up the quality spectrum, because then they get more funding through the Lincoln Littles program. So maybe that would be a statement that does move the needle forward, but does not, cause too many waves.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And when you talk about, I'm sorry, Marilyn, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead first.
When you talk about quality, I think that it needs to be just like the committee, excuse me, came together in terms of what does equity mean. I think the same thing for quality. Everyone does not have the same opinion of quality and what that entails. And so not being all inclusive, however, framing the guidelines for what quality is, I think would be helpful.
We have
right.
walled that garden. That has happened. Right. So we do have an agreed upon definition of quality and levels, Robbie, just so you know that has happened.
Yeah, I was going to comment on that as well, Brian. There is a kind of a standard out there called the Step Up to Quality that folks have invested in with regard to early childhood education in the state of Nebraska. And I think lots of folks in Lincoln have kind of brought their arms around that. So we at least have a starting point with regard to quality. I agree a lot with regard to what David said. Is one of the things we have to do is create a space in which these conversations, this community vision can be talked about, even though we can't necessarily delineate all the methods and the processes behind it. What we can do is say, this is important to us, and we can create a place in our city where we can have debate and conversation about what a quality childhood, early childhood experience looks like, and how that can be accessible by all people. And again, free is kind of challenging, but how do we make it accessible to all people, and something that's there across the board for that 3 and 4 year old population?
This is,
Thank you for sharing.
This is Dick Campbell. And another person and I chaired for the Lincoln Public Schools bond issue, the early childhood education needs and defining them. And right now, at any one time, there's 600 to 700 kids in that age group that are waiting to get into programs. And so even though we were limited to looking at Lincoln Public Schools, the programs that they do have across the city have very professional staff and have specialists that come in on language and other things. And from the public school standpoint, our recommendations were to have more in the schools, and actually when funds are available, build a building that would hold 10 to 20 classrooms of pre-K 3 and 4 year olds, and be a specialized program. Here in Lincoln, they're all bused to the ones that exist. So that helps the parents in that regard. And it gets the federal government, with what funds that come from that direction, demands that any challenged student has to be paired with a non-challenged student. So that has been one of the major components in getting challenged students in the program, and which allows then one non-challenged student to be in that classroom also. So I think that would be one of the things that we would want to mention that that exists and needs to be a focus for programs as we are able to expand them.
Thank you. Marilyn, I hope you remember what you were going to say. I hadn't forgotten about you.
I wanted to go back to the broad question. My feeling is that a plan has values. They're either implicit or explicit. And I really like making them explicit. I think that leads to community conversations, to understanding about the role of government and schools and libraries and other institutions. So I will give an example of how the equity aspect might have an interesting application if we start crossing these things. A few months ago, we talked about an idea that instead of having a downtown and satellites, you could have a neighborhood kind of organization that everybody's needs could be met within a 15 or 20 minute time period. And as I think about that, I wonder what the implications are for equity. I love the idea. It seems kind of charming. But on the other hand, what if people just all group together with their same kinds of people? And then we've actually ended up with more of an apartheid system. So I think it's important to be as explicit as we can be. And I like the work you've done.
Thank you so much for your comments. Thank all of you. We're going to move. I know we have a certain time frame, and we want to make sure that everyone's voice is heard. And then as we move on to the next section, following this of transportation. So is Paul, did Paul get on the line?
I'm here, Robbie.
Okay. Hi, Paul. How are
Hi.
you?
I'm
Good.
great. How are you?
Good, good. Paul is going to share one of our topics that we spent quite a bit of time on, and that topic is neighborhoods.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to talk through a couple points that have been discussed with our equity subcommittee regarding neighborhoods and housing. Similar work as to the other topics, we did a review of existing statements in the comprehensive plan. And so I'm going to share with you some of the preliminary results of that work. So the first example up there is updating an existing action item that's in the 2040 plan. And that statement is retain existing predominantly single-family blocks in some existing neighborhoods in order to maintain the mix of housing types. So in reviewing this, we wanted to think about, well, what is meant by this statement? And then the different individuals that may benefit or be burdened by this statement. And in doing that kind of analysis, obviously this calls out one housing type, single family housing. So that was part of the discussion. And then, you know, at the end of the day, what is this statement really saying? We wanted to clarify the meaning. And so the update was retain and encourage a mix of housing in existing and new neighborhoods in order to provide a mix of housing types at a variety of price points. So instead of calling out the single family resident type, it's more inclusive. And it's more inclusive by talking about a mix of housing types in both existing and new neighborhoods, but it's also inclusive at a variety of price points. Another example was the second item there, a new action item. And some of this work was brought forth with the Affordable Housing Action Plan. But we wanted, again, to be inclusive of all housing types. So a new proposed action item is to encourage missing middle units or units that are single family attached, cottage courts, townhomes, live work units, and 3 and 4-plex configurations, including affordable units to people with a range of incomes. Again, being inclusive, you know, not just talking about a single housing type, but the missing middle, which there's been a lot of conversation on more recently. So we feel that this is an appropriate addition to the 2050 plan to encourage, again, those mix of types. I think if there are any questions on that work specifically, I can address those. Otherwise, once again, I'm going to turn over to Robbie to facilitate the discussion on this.
Thank you, Paul. So do you see that the changes that Paul had mentioned, how they would help disparities, any inequalities? I'm seeing head nods and yes, thumbs up. Okay. And then are they more inclusive of overall development in our community?
I think they are. I'm gonna just propose something. I mean, it's kind of wacky to me, but do we need to include anything about owner occupied versus rental? Because a lot of times at hearings, we'll hear like, we don't want rental units, you know, but I think that it's important to address that, you know, renters are good too.
Yeah, I think we had some of those discussions during our sessions. Paul, do you want to address her question?
Absolutely, we did, Tracy, and that's an excellent point. And that's a really good example of the work that the Equity Subcommittee has done. The 2040 plan has a goal for home ownership and supporting that in our community. But on the flip side, we don't currently have a goal for renters. And so we're going to have a companion statement or, group of text that addresses that. And so I'm glad that you point that out, because that's just another example of the work that this subcommittee has done. Yep.
Thank you very much for your comment. And thanks for clarifying, Paul. Our next slide, Andrew will speak on what I call the engine of our community, which is workforce development.
Yes, thank you, Robbie. And I will try to be fairly quick so we can stay within time, and I want to hear what everyone's discussion is on this question. So this is something we've talked about at previous meetings, but we are adding a whole new section of the plan that addresses job training, skills development, oriented towards creating a workforce that is attractive to high quality jobs. So high quality jobs, at the base level, pay a living wage, provide benefits like health insurance, and just in general provide job security. So as part of this, we've been discussing with and integrating in the plan with the American Job Center, who does a lot of that job training, skills development work, and then LPED, Lincoln Partnership for Economic Development. We've been meeting with Brian, and we'll have some future meetings as well. So what we've come up with is we have a new workforce development goal, and we'll have a new workforce development kind of background discussion section in the plan. There's also a couple specific new policies that talk about workforce development, and then we did have some kind of existing ones in the plan that get around the same idea. But our two new policies are support development of a skilled, diverse, and trained workforce to support economic growth and high quality jobs. And then the other is removing barriers to achieving economic stability and mobility for the workforce. So I will pass it over to Robbie for the question.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Andrew. So the question is, how can the city and county encourage local businesses to provide fair wages and worker protections? What can the city and county do?
Robbie, this is Dick Campbell again. I'm not sure that the environment that we're in right now and will continue to be in is not a bigger factor than what the city and county would do. I think the city and county can encourage programs that the businesses can apply to or assist some of their workers or future workers to get better educated in the skills they're looking for. But right now, fair wages and worker benefits and protections are both being highly raised within this community because of the shortage of applicants.
That's an interesting point. And I although I don't think it's a unique to Lincoln,
no.
I think people are seeing this all over our country, all over our nation. And as you said, encouraging businesses. There's only so much that you can do with that. What do you think about workers having a voice in setting and enforcing their public health standards? I know that may be risky, depends upon what the business is, but what do you think about workers having a voice when it comes to public health?
Robbie, can you say a little bit more about that? I feel like you're driving a truck into a wall, but I don't know which wall we're about to hit.
You don't know what wall we're going to hit?
I don't know.
We're not going to hit. We're not going to hit the wall. We're not going to hit the wall. Well, my thought on that is so often workers, and I would have to say I am not as aware of Lincoln businesses as I am Omaha businesses, as I reside in Omaha. And so with that, are there, do you feel that it is important for them to have a voice? And then how do you encourage local businesses to assist them in having that voice? And what I'm looking at is, or thinking about is the number of people, the number of Americans, for example, that have died of COVID, almost 400,000. And in many of those cases, those workers contracted the virus while still being on the job, because they had to be on the job. And so just kind of highlighting the urgent need to, and I know this may be beyond the scope, we talked about that earlier, knowing when things are not in your wheelhouse, but still advocating. But there needs to be some type of reform, workplace health and safety standards. So that's what I meant about speaking up and having a voice. And that was just from the healthcare perspective.
Robbie, this is Dick Campbell again. We have a safety committee that is employee-based. As COVID came upon us in March of last year, it was the safety committee that brought forth a mandated mask policy for within our business.
Interesting.
And which we adopted immediately and had posted for clients that came into the garden centers to also wear masks. And that's the kind of things that we see come from our safety committee, as well as identifying what may be hazards in each of their different areas that need to be addressed. So I think the thing we could do would be to encourage the businesses to look at providing a workers' safety committee to aid in the health and welfare of all employees within that business.
Marilyn?
I like that a lot. I would say the alternative is unionization, but I don't think we're going to put that in the comp plan. So I think fallback is a good one.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
You know, this is Dean. I have found in the past that Lincoln businesses, especially larger employees or employers, have been willing to open themselves up to employee voices. Dick, I'm thinking of Lincoln Industries and
yes.
Emeritus and those good companies we have, FireSpring. And again, there's great communication among upper management and the people on the floor, you know, and encouraging that kind of communication to me seems great. And also, I want to go back to what Tracy said about community conversations. You know, you can have community conversations in all kinds of areas. And again, I found Lincoln to be pretty willing to do that. Now, there are some exceptions and things are political these days. And so that may hinder it. But Dick, I like what you're saying. And I can't imagine, I think there are enough large employers here in Lincoln that would be willing to step up and say, we have that already.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for starting the conversation. And one of the things that to keep in mind is that it's just the beginning. I know you've put lots of work into this. The Equity Subcommittee has worked hard, and but this is the beginning. If you remember, all of the information that we shared to you that has been compiled over these several months, as was noted on the equity slide, talking about reoccurring themes. And that was to continue these conversations of equity beyond this process. As you had mentioned, there were some of your larger companies within Lincoln that were willing to come to the table and have these important conversations. The plan, as the committee was looking at it, is it equitable? Is that same conversation happening to not just within 3 companies? That's a start, and that's a good start, because then hopefully utilizing them to go and talk to other companies. There may be some assumptions that all companies are doing it, and we know that that may not be true. That may not be. However, as we continue to discuss, and I encourage you to continue to have these conversations. Sometimes they can be painful, but if we are going to grow, then that is inevitable. That pain is inevitable as we learn from and of each other to make things equitable for everyone. Not equal, but equitable. So there's a quote that aligns our collective responsibility by Peter Drucker, and it says, your foremost job as a leader is to take charge of your own energy and then help orchestrate the energy of those that are around you. And so, again, thank you for this opportunity, and I'm going to return you into the hands of David.
Okay, well, thank you, Robbie, very much for today, as well as for your work with us over the last several months. Completely agree that this is the beginning of the conversation, and that conversation needs to continue. And to put that in the context of a comprehensive plan, it works very well, because the comprehensive plan is that visionary document that also has some nuts and bolts to it. This is a really good opportunity to create the new plan that has this topic of equity in it, and speaking to these issues, not necessarily having all the answers, not necessarily being able to conduct all the work, but to set the stage for those ongoing conversations. So that's the thought process right now as we try to finalize what this new plan looks like. And we update this plan regularly. So in and of itself, it continues the conversation. So I think that's a good way to think about it. With that, we want to take some time today to talk about our transportation topic. And Jesse has been waiting, I don't know about patiently, but he's been with us the entire time today so far. So I think I'm going to pass it off to Jesse now, and he's got information to share with us on the update of the long-range transportation plan.
Before I do that, I think it's commensurate. You've been sitting and talking for an hour. You need to take 2 minutes and just stretch it out, wiggle it out, do something, get moving. I don't even want to comprehend how you're going to fall asleep if you sit here for another half hour listening to me. So whatever you got to do, I'm going to get my presentation up here. Feel free to stretch. And Robbie, I wish you and I could work together more. I was just fascinated by your approach to this. This is fun work that you're doing. We are also doing fun work. I'm gonna make sure that I'm sharing the right thing. Hopefully y'all are seeing a community committee presentation slide. Yeah, okay. So not to be outdone by David and his awesome background, I wanted to make sure we were representing the LRTP, although ours is long and rectangular, his is square, so it fits nicely in the window. We've been working really hard to develop a long-range transportation plan that's going forward at the same time as the comprehensive plan, so a lot of overlap. And today we're going to talk a lot about some of the things you're working with the policies. We're going to focus on where we're at with the transportation plan. My name is Jesse Poor. I'm with Felsberg, Holt & Ullevig. I appreciate you having me today. I'm going to share some information, then we'll dialogue a little bit, just as you did in the previous session. It was December where we made a last presentation to you. And at that presentation, we were reporting out on a lot of the great input we had in phase 1 about the goals of transportation within the community. And we were able to share with you the process that we would go through for weighting projects and coming through with that list of projects that were prioritized according to how well they would meet the goals of the transportation program. This is done every 5 years to develop that programming. And so prioritizing projects is very important. So we were able to hear from you, get a sense from you what's important. And then since then, we've been working with phase 2 to get the projects that are most important to the public and feed that into our process for data-driven analysis. So all of that's been going on, and at the same time, we've been starting to do the same work that you just listened to, developing policies and action steps related to transportation. So today we're going to talk specifically about the connection between transportation goals, policies, and action steps. And then we're going to share with you 2 of the policies that have come out of our process, and then briefly close with next steps. As a quick reminder, we had 7 goals that came forward with the last LRTP, or the Long Range Transportation Plan. They were very well defined and didn't change a whole lot, but we did add a new goal related to transportation equity to be very overt about the transportation investments to lead to equitable outcomes for the community. And as a reminder, the goals, when we talk about transportation, long-range transportation plan, those goals are required for developing a data-driven decision-making process so that we know that when we're making investments in transportation, they are lined up and stacked up against meeting these goals that we can rely on and know that the outcome is well decided. But then when they were developing this idea of policies and the comprehensive plan and advancing those policies into the LRTP, we said, all right, let's add transportation policies. We went through the process of phase 1 public input, and we heard all kinds of ideas on how to reach those goals. And we used those to harness the list of policy ideas in front of you. We have 17 identified. And they range all over the modes and all over the concepts related to transportation. These policies, in our perspective, are guiding principles, and they help the city and county make decisions that are supported by the action steps. So they fit within the goals and they're connected. They're not required by the LRTP, but they are going to help us make sure that there's good continuity between the LRTP and the comprehensive plan. So like I said, we talked in the first round of the phase 1 public input, and we asked, how do you think we should reach the goals? What are your ideas? And it was a lively conversation, specifically with the 10 focus groups that we had. Over 80 people were able to give us ideas. We packaged all those together. We had about 233 different ideas related to all the goals. After analyzing them, we were able to consolidate things and kind of trim it up and find the 61 draft action steps that would go forward with the goals. And then we've unpacked those into the 17 policies. So action steps kind of play the role of supporting the LRTP, but they also fit within the comprehensive plan supportive of the policies. So we think about those as methods or techniques that you would follow to accomplish that desired target. So we're going to talk a little bit about those today. We're not going to go through all 17. That would be terribly hard for all of us, but we are going to focus in on 2. And the reason we're going to talk about these 2 is because there was just a density of conversation around transportation and the environment and transportation and managing growth. And so again, these weren't in the, yes.
Real quick before we dive into that, it sounds like your connection is kind of cutting in and out. I'm not sure if there's a loose wire or something on your end.
I've been called a loose cannon, but not a loose wire. Can you hear me better?
Yes.
Okay. My sincere apologies, and thank you, Paul, for calling it out. Yeah, we're going to talk about two of the policies, and I'll share why here in a minute. Transportation and the environment came to the forefront because it was part of the larger community conversation related to the climate action plan. And so it was very easy for us to hear because they were listening and thinking about strategies related to transportation and the environment, but overall the environment and climate resiliency. So that became a policy, and we used the key reference of the 2050 climate action plan as kind of our guidepost, not to replicate it, but to really stand up and reinforce it. Looking at the climate smart strategies related to auto-reliant transportation and reliance on fossil fuels, you'll be able to find those in that plan, which has a very ambitious goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by 2050. Or the we think that's great, and you'll find almost 60 strategies within that plan related to these 2 areas of focus. And so we use that as our key reference. We don't try to replicate that within the LRT, but create good cohesion between the 2. I'm not going to dwell too much on this because it's really well defined in the climate action plan, but transportation is recognized as a significant source of greenhouse gas emissions. And so addressing that head on is a very logical place to focus when we're trying to reach that 80 by 50 goal. Specifically within the region, you're seeing gradual increases in emissions. I'll talk about that here in a second. A lot of it is related to the amount of vehicle miles that are traveled and the increases with growth. If you take a look at the bottom right-hand graph, you'll see the blue line, which is trying to indicate on average how many miles people travel per year. Hasn't changed a whole lot, slight decrease over time, and that's here locally in the Lincoln MPO. The orange line is reflective of the number of total vehicle miles traveled for everyone within the region. And so you see that increasing over time. And as the area grows, as the community grows, you're going to continue to see those vehicle miles continue to tick up. And so that becomes an area of focus as how much we are driving. How's my audio? I just want to check in on that. Still bouncing in and out?
Yeah, it still is, Jesse.
Okay. Let me do this. My sincere apologies about how's the audio there? Not hearing me at all.
Yeah.
1 second. One second.
It might help if you stayed stationary. You're moving a bit, and that seems to encourage the sound in and out.
No, I don't know that it's that or if it's my default audio. How's that? Is that a little better?
That seems to be better, Jesse. We'll see. Thank you.
Again, sincere apologies. So trying to correlate sort of the reference to the climate action plan with vehicle miles traveled, we need to address that head on. Really, the question for the chat box, I'll move on to the next slide, but the chat box really is asking realistically, how fast or how quickly do you think we can change the emissions trend that you see in the region? Is that a short-term change? Is that a medium-term change or a long-term? And you just type in the chat box, short, medium, or long, and we'll get a sense of how objective folks are and optimistic. But as you type that in, continue to think about the environment and sort of the vehicles miles traveled. You got single occupancy vehicle. That's the term that's used for anytime you get into a vehicle and there's nobody else with you. I know you love your dogs. That's still a single occupancy vehicle when you're bringing your dog. But when you're thinking about people traveling around, about 81% of the time, you've got one person, one operator in that vehicle. And so that becomes an area of focus when you think about how do we reduce the vehicle miles traveled, is how do we get more people in vehicles, whether it's commuting with a friend or partner or family member or jumping on a bus. If you think about sort of the trend over time, about 81% of those trips are single vehicle operated trips. And so it is a trend that's remained relatively steady. And so the question for the group was, if you had to state one or two barriers to realizing any significant change from this number, what might you offer as barriers to those changes or those shifts? And I will say that I jumped in my car and I drove to work today by myself. So this isn't an accusation on anybody. It's just a realization that this is the primary mode of choice. And there are some real barriers to that. Anybody have a barrier that's top of mind?
Well, lack of a bus service alternative in a lot of cases.
All right. No ideas yet to share. I'll share a couple here. On the next slide, I'll address some of the challenges. But we want to address the transportation of the environment mostly because we want to maintain air quality standards in compliance with federal standards. Failing to achieve that puts us into a whole new area where we have to focus some of our limited financial resources into transportation investments that might not fit where we'd like to if we didn't have those constraints. Protecting the environment generally is important for personal health and safety, protecting cultural environmental assets around us, and the high quality of life that we all enjoy here in Lincoln. Again, the last bullet is really just a defer back to the climate action plan. And by addressing the environment in our transportation decision makings, we provide a sustainable infrastructure that's going to be there for a long time and is resilient to impacts from anticipated climate change. So those are some of the drivers for why. And here are some of those challenges that I was asking, some of the barriers. Vehicle ownership provides households with expanded opportunities. It's very obvious if you have a vehicle, if you have access to it, it certainly opens up a window of more opportunities to jobs and services. Single occupancy vehicle is the most convenient mode often for most people, most able driver people. And active transportation or alternative modes of transportation very rarely are considered first as an option or ever for a lot of folks who are just used to driving by themselves. We do see oftentimes agencies need to lead the way in mode shift changes. And we do recognize that electric vehicle adoption is on the horizon, but it is also market driven. So our LRTP can put ourselves in place to capitalize on it, but can't necessarily drive it as much as the market factors would. And then the last point is really a point about stormwater management and green infrastructure. Although it is highly prioritized, there is a reality that the right-of-way is expensive and oftentimes is private property where you're trying to fit that in. So challenges persist with meeting transportation and so like you heard from the previous sessions, we've come forward with a policy statement for each of these. So for transportation environment, our recommended policy statement is simply put to incorporate environmental stewardship, sustainability, and resilience into transportation decisions and investments. As you can see, that's a very succinct way of framing thought processes around discussions related to transportation investments. And again, this is a new policy, so this isn't something that we've taken and tried to modify like you saw in the previous session. So this on its merits is the first time you're seeing it or thinking about it. As you read it, is it clear enough, or is there something that you would want to add detail to improve this policy?
We talked in the last session
Robbie, I
about.
think you're on mute and I really want to hear what you got to say. No?
No.
Oh, maybe I just can't hear you. I'll turn my volume up. There we go. It's my issue, not yours.
Okay. Yeah, because I think Marilyn had said something earlier, I believe. But anyway, I was saying, as we had said in the last session, how words have meaning. And I really like how you use the word environmental stewardship straight out as one of the first areas, and then definitely sustainability and resiliency. I like it. I like it. I think it's a good working policy.
The only thing I might consider adding is
Well,
at the very.
I hope I'm not talking over top of anybody, but I have lost my ability to hear anybody else now that I've disconnected whatever I did. I'm not sure how to get this corrected here. I'm clicking all kinds of buttons.
Dick, do you want to finish your thought?
Sure, Paul. One thing I would add is I might try to bring it down to be reflective to individuals and the entire community, and say something like in resiliency into transportation decisions and investments, personally and citywide.
Good. Yeah, that's nice.
Is there any other comment on this? I'm trying to chat with Jesse to keep him informed.
All right. I sincerely appreciate your thoughts. I'm not able to hear them. This is a kerfuffle. one last try here.
All right, folks, are you hearing me? Okay.
I can hear you.
I'll continue to the next slide. Robbie, could you give me a shout out if I can hear you?
Hey, Jesse, this is Kelly. Can you hear me?
There you go. Okay. Let me head to the next slide here. Apologies, I don't know exactly how to rectify this one. This is quite odd. So our policy statement would set our action steps. Kind of go into presentation mode here. Once we've defined the policy, then we try to find some methods to help achieve that outcome of the goal. And so we've established a handful of draft action steps, and we'll continue this process for all 17 of the policies. So our first action step is simply stated to support the strategies listed in the Climate Action Plan related to transportation infrastructure. We heard very clearly from feedback from the community that they wanted to see that connection. And so on its surface, those 59 action steps or strategies within that plan are supported. But more specifically, we have prioritized the Lincoln Climate Action Plan strategies that specified MPO coordination. There were 3 of them. One is developing travel demand management programs, or getting the balance of that transportation system and use of it, working with larger employers or getting different work schedules to try and balance some of the demand on the system. Promoting active commuter incentives or ways to get people out of the vehicle and commuting differently. And incentivizing adoption of electric vehicles by city employees. These were well thought out action strategies or action steps. And so we would support them in the LRTP overtly. We added 5 other action steps related to this policy. The first one, adding electric charging stations with public access. You're going to see the demand for that more in various ways. And so having that option available for those vehicles in different places. Replacing city and county fleet with electric vehicles. The third one is kind of a connection to the third one on the list on the previous slide, but creating policies, providing education, supporting incentives to replace single occupancy vehicle trips of 3 miles or less with carpooling, transit, and active transportation for all residents. Really thinking about how to make those services and opportunities that you would want to have access to available within that 3-mile circle, accessible by alternate modes. The fourth one would be designing roadways to limit stormwater runoff with permeable and disconnected surfaces. We heard that in the public input to continue that approach, and incorporating cultural and natural resources within the network of active transportation corridors, not only preserving them, but also enhancing the value of utilizing them. And so there's 5 action steps plus the 2 on the previous slide will help us accomplish the transportation and environment policy. So I'm going to let you have conversation now. I'm going to continue working on my audio. If you think about those, we have just a little bit of time left. We'll probably end here. Do you think that those action steps are actually modes to accomplish some of the challenges? And I'm reprinted them here on the slide. Is there someone optimistic who would say that, yeah, those action steps would be supportive to address these challenges? Or do you think we need another action step that wasn't included? As Mike Myers would say, talk amongst yourselves.
Jesse, I'm not sure. Can you hear me? No. Okay. Well, let's just have a discussion on this. If anyone has any thoughts or comments.
I have maybe an off-the-wall comment, but since there are so many state agencies located in Lincoln, could the city bear any influence about state decisions on buying electric vehicles?
That's an interesting comment. I'm not sure.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
What comes to my mind is like a tax incentive, so like some kind of rebate or something, like if you drive an electric vehicle, but I think that's might already be out there, and I don't know how the city would do that as opposed to like the state.
Yeah, I own an electric car and I have to pay $75 extra every year to register my car. Extra. So that would be a cool policy to change. And their reasoning is because I don't pay the gas tax. Yeah, so I have a 9-year-old electric car and a good portion of my registration fee is a penalty for driving an electric car.
They should pay you for not polluting.
Tell that to Rachel Garver. Lancaster County Commissioners, looking at you.
But on behalf of the communities that rely on the gas taxes to make improvements to our roads, I can understand why they do that.
Yeah, and times are changing, and I think we should be able to adjust.
Yeah.
So then maybe LES contributes. But if we think that we're going to continue relying on fossil fuel vehicles to maintain our roads, I don't think that's a wise gamble.
Exactly.
That's an excellent point. And something that we discuss as we look out 30 years for transportation projects that rely on that funding. Any other comments on that or other thoughts? Okay, I know we are nearing the end of our time. I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up. I know we have more content on this topic, so we'll try to swing that around maybe at another meeting. I guess for final thoughts or next steps, Andrew, am I turning it over to you?
Yes, and I'll be quick since we're at our time. Just kind of a reminder on the overall schedule that we've been talking about a lot now. The draft plan is going to go public this summer, late summer, so August, maybe September. And the idea or the hope is that we can maybe even have one or two or maybe even 3 in-person events, small in-person events. But we'll see. We're going to keep doing the virtual events as well, so people will always have that option. But the idea is that the plan will be out this summer. For this committee, we're going to start focusing or start sharing specific plan content with you. We've written pages and pages of material. There's still tons of work we got to do, but we do have some stuff that is, I think, very close to being ready that we're excited to share with you. So next month, we're going to look at our goals. So the goals are kind of those big picture items. We have somewhere around 12 goals that we're going to share with you and discuss those with you. So we're really looking forward to that and actually getting some of this planned content out there for you to look at. So with that, I think I'll hand it off to David to see if he has any final thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I actually just sent a chat to the whole group. It's interesting that we end on a topic that could be an entire discussion for a meeting, which is what happens if we're successful with our transition of the fleet for vehicles to all electric, and then we don't adjust our revenue streams we still have to maintain streets, we still have to do things for the transportation system. That is a very large topic that a lot of people are acknowledging now, but has to really, all levels of government and the private sector need to be engaged on that, because that's a topic that is, if we don't start to really address that, we are going to be in a world of hurt in I'd say about 10 years potentially. So
to be very clear, I am pro drivable roads and bridges.
Right.
Just so everyone's clear on this for our friends on the internet. Yeah.
Right.
Pro roads.
So what I'll leave you with is that you're receiving this information today and then giving us feedback throughout the meeting is very much appreciated. I think you can tell that we have a lot of works to do still to try to make sure we create the new plan that is sending sharing the right messaging that we want to put in it, but at the same time, understanding what the role is of the comprehensive plan as we create it and roll it out and adopt it. So your thoughts, continued thoughts on that and input is very much appreciated. So if you want to message us directly post meeting or between meetings, that is absolutely something that we'd appreciate. As Andrew said, there's a lot of work to do. We've done a lot of work already, but we're going to continue doing it. And with that, I will thank you for your time and go out and enjoy the sun a little bit. Some of you have enjoyed it during the meeting. I'm very jealous. So thank you all and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.